This might be an episode that you have to listen to twice. Something really caught my eye as I was reading through my Bible a few months ago, and digging into it has revealed a few things to me about the spiritual realm and how spiritual beings, such as angels and demons, can have access into our lives here on earth. So I was reading about Jacob's dream in Genesis 28, and how this location where he had his dream had its name changed from Luz to Bethel. And if you have read Genesis or if you've studied Jacob's life before, you're probably familiar with this dream. It's whenever he saw a ladder or a stairway to heaven with the angels going up and down on it. And when Jacob wakes up, he makes this statement in verse 17. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So this is something I've read over dozens of times before, but this time that phrase, gate of heaven, really stood out to me because I wondered precisely what that means, that this somewhat random location on earth was declared to be the gate of heaven. Even more curiously to me, this was the only time in the entire Bible that the phrase, the gate of heaven, is used. I found that to be weird, and I'd like to explore why it's in the Bible. And today, I'll give you my theories on that. Turn with me to Genesis 28, and let's get weird. Welcome to Weird Stuff in the Bible, where we explore scripture passages that are bizarre, perplexing, or just plain weird. This is Luke Taylor, and today we're going to be talking about Jacob's dream in Genesis 28. And I want to start by reading the story so that we're all caught up on the context here. This is shortly after Jacob tricks his father Isaac into giving him the blessing of the firstborn over his twin brother Esau. And this has understandably caused some hard feelings in his family. In fact, Genesis 27:41 says that Esau might just kill Jacob someday after Isaac passes away. Now, neither Jacob nor Esau were such great guys. Esau is kind of a brute, and Jacob is a major trickster. In fact, they really remind me of Thor and Loki, if you've ever seen the Thor film from 2011. And just like Thor and Loki, both of these guys get some serious character development as you go through their stories. But back here in Genesis 27, it's still pretty early on, and the things are pretty tense at home. And so to avoid any more family strife, in the next chapter, Isaac and Rebekah send Jacob to go find his uncle Laban, and he's in a land called Haran. And they send him there to go find a wife and to live out there for a while. Along the way, he camps out near a city called Luz. And so it says in Genesis 28, and we're going to read verses 10 through 22, Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And as he came to a certain place and stayed there that night, because the sun had set, taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed. And behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. So verse 12 right there, it said there was a ladder. I'm reading there in the ESV. If you look at other translations, sometimes they'll use the word stairway, or it might have a footnote that says a flight of steps. So if you thought that Led Zeppelin came up with the stairway to heaven, I got some bad news for you. So in verse 13, we'll pick it up there. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at the first. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. So that's the story right there. And this city of Bethel, it's going to come up in various other places in Scripture. Jacob's going to return to this spot in chapter 35 and set up an altar to God there. And this becomes a holy site to interact with God in the book of Judges and 1st and 2nd Samuel. Around the time of 1st and 2nd Kings, it becomes kind of a center of pagan worship. And so I think we might explore the story of Bethel in next week's lesson, because there's some really practical applications if we trace all of that out as well. But for today, we're going to go back to verse 17. So Jacob names this location Bethel because that word means house of God. Bethel is Bethel. El means God, and Beth means house of. So Bethel is the house of God. And that's what Jacob said right after he woke up. He said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." Jacob was so excited because in his dream, he entered the spiritual realm. Now, he was not picked up and taken somewhere else, kind of like Ezekiel or some of the other prophets were whenever they were sometimes allowed to visit the spiritual realm. Jacob was kept right here in this exact spot, and it said he bore witness to a ladder or a stairway to heaven. He saw angels ascending and descending on it. So what does this mean? This location was a point of connection between heaven and earth, between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. This was an entryway between earth and heaven where angels were allowed to enter our realm. And it was at this physical location right here on the earth. Now, once I realized this a few months ago, this was a bit paradigm shifting for me, and I'll explain why. This implies that angels can only access our reality from particular locations. It has to be an entryway that's opened up. In other words, angels, and we're going to learn later, demons, cannot just pop into and out of existence wherever they desire. There are particular access points scattered throughout the earth where they can enter and exit our realm. Now, if that sounds a little bit far-fetched and maybe kind of sketchy, let me just say, hang in there. I'm going to get to some more scripture on it in a few minutes. But let me first, I want to explain my thought process on this, and I want to explain how my thought process has changed after kind of having this realization. So previously, I had the idea that angels could just manifest from anywhere that they want to wherever they want, just by virtue of being a higher dimensional being. I had the idea that they could kind of treat the earth like it's a lower dimension. Let me use an example, and I'll use the difference in 2D and 3D, okay? Let's say that I'm holding up a piece of paper with a stick figure on it, okay? He is a two-dimensional person, all right? Let's pretend for a minute that he were fully alive, a fully conscious being here on this page. And let's say that I want to interact with him as a three-dimensional person. Well, I can put my finger over on one side of the page, and a moment later, I can put my finger on the other side of the page. He's only seeing things in 2 dimensions. Okay, he can't see me outside of the page. He could only see things along his plane of existence, which is flat. Okay, but he can catch a glimpse of me, a limited glimpse of me, if I poke my finger into the page. Okay, if I did that, a tiny sliver of me would break into his world. Now, he could not behold me in my entirety because he only sees in 2D. I am 3D, okay? He just sees squares. I can see cubes. He only sees circles. I can see spheres. From my perspective, I could see all of Mr. 2D Man, okay? I can see in front of him. I can see behind him. I can poke my finger into the page in front of him. I can poke my finger into the page behind him. I can poke my finger in both in front of him and behind him at the same time. I can do that because from my perspective, I'm a 3D man. I have a higher plane of existence. He is a 2D man. He has a more limited plane of existence. So in his eyes, I'm teleporting, I'm multiplying, I'm appearing and disappearing because he only has a very limited understanding of what I'm doing. It probably looks very much kind of like how humans might perceive of the appearance of angels in the Bible. Or maybe you've heard testimonies of people who saw angelic visitations, and the angels just kind of seem to come from nowhere. They just pop into and out of existence. They appear and they reappear, or they disappear. Sometimes their appearance is so dazzling that humans struggle to comprehend and explain them. Now, this makes sense to me if angels are beings of a higher dimension, if they are fourth dimensional beings, because I am 3D, spiritual beings are 4D. So even if I cannot comprehend fourth dimensional beings and they seem very mysterious to me, I can at least understand why I can't comprehend them. They are from a higher dimension than I am, just like I'm from a higher dimension than Mr. 2D. And my interactions with him would be very confusing and mysterious to him. I can understand why, to me, a higher dimensional being, such as an angel or a demon, why they would take actions that seem confusing and mysterious. And furthermore, this probably explains some of the unexplainable UFO phenomena that have been witnessed over the years. And I'm not going to go too deep into that. I'm not necessarily trying to go down a rabbit trail about aliens today. I don't really believe in aliens, but I do believe that perhaps some of these UFO visitations that people have reported, that they could be supernatural visitations of angels or demons. So when you observe the behavior of some of those UFOs, they seem to be able to accelerate and decelerate at rates far outside the abilities of modern aircraft. They pop into and out of existence. They can make these sharp 90-degree turns at speeds which seem impossible even with our most sophisticated technology. It doesn't make sense to us from a three-dimensional perspective. But if you allow for the possibility that they are fourth-dimensional beings, then it does make some sense why it doesn't make sense. So I hope you're following me on all that today. Like I said, this might be an episode that you have to listen to twice. And also, this is kind of my old theory about how all this stuff worked, okay? And in many ways, I still hold to it. But I think I have a new understanding of their limitations or how things operate in regard to the spiritual realm. So I do not believe that angels and demons and everything in between, I don't believe that they could just pop into and out of our world whenever they want to, or wherever they want to. I think that there's a limitation placed on them of where they could enter. And this limitation is either placed by God, or maybe it's just a limitation that's in place just because of the difference between the physical and the spiritual realm. There is a veil of separation between the physical and the spiritual, and we are separated from the spiritual. But I believe that the spiritual is also separated from us, unless a tear is made in the veil, an opening. Okay, in modern terms, we might use the word portal to describe this, all right? There has to be a portal that's opened up between the physical and the spiritual for beings to pass between them. Now you say, well, Luke, okay, that sounds a bit science fiction-y right there. It's an interesting theory, but this sounds more like it could be the plot of a movie or something. What does this have to do with the Bible? Is there any biblical evidence in support of all this? Well, I'm glad you asked, okay? You're not going to see the word portal in the Bible, but I believe that the biblical term for these openings is gates, all right? As in, this is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And like I said before, I found it really interesting that this is the only place in the Bible that uses the phrase, the gate of heaven. After all, there's another series of gates that are famously mentioned by Jesus in Matthew 16. And we'll pick it up at verse 18 there, where he said, "And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Okay, and we talked about that verse last week and what it really meant when he said, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." If you go back to last week's episode, episode 60, I explained that verse in detail, and we're going to keep building on that understanding in the future here. Verse 19, "I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." Well, if you go back to an episode I released last November, it was episode 52. It was about prayers of binding and loosing. I explained that this is spiritual warfare language. These are the exact words and phrases that the Bible uses when talking about binding spiritual beings, battling demons, fighting in the spiritual realm. So what did Jesus mean by this term, the gates of hell? Well, you've probably heard the application before that gates are supposed to be defensive structures, and so this verse is calling on the church, on the Christian, to take the fight to hell, that we are supposed to go on the offense. And I agree with that application. But I also believe that Jesus is not just being metaphorical right here when he speaks of gates. He could very well be referring to particular locations on planet Earth that are portals or openings that demons use to enter our realm. All right, let me say that again. He could be referring to particular locations on planet Earth that are portals or openings that demons use to enter our realm. So my theory today, my thesis statement, if you will, is that visitors from the spiritual dimension don't or can't just pop into existence from wherever they want to. They have specific locations where they can travel between their realm and ours. And the Bible refers to these portals to the spiritual dimension as gates. And I think I better stop there for today because I've dumped a lot on you this time, okay? So let's table it here for this week, all right? We'll pick it up again next week. You might be saying, Luke, I thought we had a bunch of verses you said we were going to get through. And yeah, we only went through like 3 verses today, but I do have a lot more verses I want to talk about. I'm just sensing maybe I should save them for next time, probably for the next couple of weeks, okay? We're going to go through several scriptures over the next few weeks, and we're going to talk about this subject and build on what I've been talking about today. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of those episodes coming up. And I'll just say this gives you a chance to chime in. If you want to send me an email to weirdstuffinthebible@gmail.com, you're welcome to challenge anything I've said today. Maybe if you're tracking with me, maybe you have some resources or some podcasts that you could send me that might help me study this out a bit more. So this is a little bit different type of episode for me because it's not something I've taught on before, okay? This is stuff I've not totally settled on how I feel about it. I'm just kind of working my way through these things in real time right in front of you here. So if you have something helpful that you want to send me, please stick it in an email and send it my way. You're welcome to try to poke holes in my theory here. Just, I'm here poking holes in the fabric of reality. So I'd say that's fair. But I will say this. Ever since I started studying on this topic a few months ago, I just keep finding other places now where there's other Bible teachers who have taught on this exact subject and said pretty much the same things that I'm saying in regards to portals and gates and all that. So I'm glad to see that, but I'm not even jumping into what they've taught. I'm not trying to go too deep with that because I am not trying to copy somebody else's research right here. I'm really just trying to share what I believe that God is revealing to me. So I'm not saying I have all this right, but I'm just trying to be led of God in all this. And so we're going to close it down here for today. This was probably your first Bible study with portals in it, okay? I know it was for me. But if you come back next time, it doesn't have to be your last. And if you think studying portals in the Bible sounds weird, I hope you'll get weird with me again next week too. Thanks for listening. God bless you for sticking around till the end. And we'll see you next time on Weird Stuff in the Bible.